Yes, I can see it from my side.
Yeah, Lydia can see it. Solomon can see it. Oh, I thought, Solomon, you are looking for the other colleagues, so you are also here with us. Okay. First, I would say thank you so much for agreeing to have this with me. And I know when I talked to Caleb, he told me so much about what product you wanted to discuss in. And yes, whereas that is why we're going to spend almost 40, 30 minutes into it, I always say it's always better to kind of start from the beginning. That way we kind of loop into the same conversation altogether. And I know it's, for me, it's always about the three important things, which is the finance, managing the finance, the investment, and then the debt management, which these days it's very important for me to talk about. But as we're going to see, most of the conversation we're going to have is on the other two. So, and for most of us, especially who are employed, and majority of us, it's always trying to climb out of that financial hole. We always look up and you want to get out of this, and you have to use the little resources that you do have and see how can I use those to ensure that I benefit myself. And for the whatever product we'll end up discussing today, allow me to mute you, Caleb, for now. That's getting a little bit of feedback, okay? For whatever product we're going to discuss today, it's going to rotate around those two, to rotate around treasury bonds and bills and the unit trusts. Then because I'm advocating for equities, right now we have Airtel IPO, we might have to talk about that. And we're not talking about that in a way that you learn, but in a way to compare investments. I don't know if that's I've prepared this in such a way to kind of give, because from what I had the conversation with Caleb, he showed me that this group knows what they are doing. But also it's just, I'm going to bring it out in a way how to compare investments, what to look out for. Okay, we have another person. So how to compare these two investments and then look out for, and how does it make sense? So without further ado, let me just go to the investment here. Let me jump a few things, though they are very important. Now, let's start with the unity trusts that you are doing for a single moment. Caleb, remind me, which unit trust are you with? Which fund manager? Or anyone else can help me remind me, which fund manager are you with?
Zeno.
Oh, you're with Zeno. Okay. Okay, Zeno has that, yeah, goal-based investments, not where you can choose which investment to do. Now, in the unit trusts, what we are seeing across the 6 unit trust fund managers is an interest that gives around 10, 11, 12% per year. So that means if you have 10 million there, you expect at least to get a 1.2 million as interest per year. So your money grows. Now that return is very, very good. I know it might not be the best, but depending on the risk that you are taking and the fact that you do not put in so much effort, that rate is very, very good. Now with the Zeno, it's goals based. So they choose for you where you fall. You don't choose. You cannot choose if you want to do money markets. You can't choose if you want to do bond market. Yet in other funds, in other fund managers, you can choose that depending on how they perform. So the starting position, why I wanted to start from there is, as you talk about diversification, that's one other angle you have to think about. At the end of the day, the goal should always be to maximize a portfolio, to maximize your returns. You want to put your money where it will get the most money possible. So you have to think through and say, hey, and I do that monthly, where I say, what does Sanlam provide? What does Brenda is here? Sorry, perfect. So you have to be patient to say, what does Sanlam provide? What does UAP provide? Is my money making the most money in this unit trust? And as you diversify from banks to unit trust to the bonds we're going to talk about, you still want to diversify at a point where it makes the most money. Brenda is Okay, let me admit her here. I think she's having an issue with her internet or anything. So that's where I wanted us to start from. So you look through and say, where do I make the most money from? Is it from the, even if it's the unit trust, and what percentage of unit trust should I have in the unit trust? So that's where we should come from. Now, then that brings us, if you know most times all unit trusts are giving around 10, 11%, maximum 12%, and those are very few. Those are the ones which invest in the bond market, but they are very, very rare. Then you want to go to where they make the most money. Then you ask yourself, if I want to diversify and go into the bonds, how can I do it? Now, you are an investment club. I'm not sure if you are registered as a partnership or if you are registered as a company. How do you have your account with a commercial bank? Caleb?
Yeah, we have our account as an investment. It is an investment
An
club.
investment club. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. You are welcome, Brenda. Thank you so much for joining us. So if you have it as an investment club, that's still okay. So when you are to go to invest in treasury bonds, you have to think through about 3 things that are very, very important about treasury bonds. One, timing of your investment, because different timing impact the coupon the government or Bank of Uganda will provide. Two, the length of your investment. Length impacts coupon and it impacts withholding tax. And we have seen people, if you are an investment club and your goal is to invest longest term possible, I'm assuming, and I might be wrong here, but let me assume the average age of the group, the investment club, is, let's say, 35. Then you means you can play the long-term game to invest for 20 years from now. So when you are to go and buy a bond, do not buy a bond of 2 years. Because why? The bond of 2 years is impacted by, it charges with a lot of withholding tax, because it charges 20% too. When you go to buy a bond of 2 years, it's going to have lower interest rate or lower coupon rate. So that means your returns are minimal. So you have to think about 3 things. You have to think about the tax that bond is being charged on. 1, 2, you have to think about the term of the loan, of the bond, and that is always driven by your investment goal. If I'm advising someone who is at 55 and they're about to retire, I would potentially tell them to buy a bond of 5 years, because potentially in 5 years, when they reach 60, they would want that money. At the same time, if I'm advising someone at 60 years who is about to get his pension, and they don't want, they just want money that can easily be, what's the word to use? You just want to have cash flows, and for as long as you retire, I would still tell them go and invest in a long-term bond, because the longer-term bond will guarantee you for 20 years getting cash flows every single year that you can comfortably live on. So for your group, this is an investment club, and you set it up for specific reasons. And if you want to play the long-term game, the first advice I'll put on the table, and we're going to look at the numbers, are always invest in long-term bonds at a minimum 10 years, because with a 10-year period, you get less tax, which is 10% withholding tax. 2, there are always higher coupon rates, which means you get higher returns. And the payback period, the period you need to get back your money, is mostly limited. In 6 years, you can get back your forgive me. In 6 years, you can always get back your investments, and the rest of the years you are getting interest back, and depending on how you play your investment game. Are we okay up to that point? I don't want to continue if someone has a question or clarification up to there.
I think from my side, I have no question, unless the part of the colleagues have.
Yes, Brenda, I can see your hand. Brian is okay. Brenda, you have your hand up. I don't know either you are okay or you have a question. I'm assuming she is okay. So let's look at the numbers, and I'm going to try to compare to you the short term and the long term, but then at the same time try to give you what the best strategy. Now, next month, 20 years, does this have payback in between? Okay, there is a question here of, yeah, you can actually type the question. 20 years, does this have payback in between? Yes, okay, that's okay, Lydia, kindly simplify sometimes. If I say a term that you are not familiar with, just type it in and I will address it. I do not want to leave you behind. Let's maximize the 1 hour we have plus, right? So let me start with treasury bonds. I don't know. Treasury bonds, which I've so far talked about, is when you lend money to the government through Bank of Uganda. That's the standard product. The withholding tax that I'm talking about, because you have to pay tax on every income you make. So government charges you some tax off it. So what it is, and I'll share with you some of these documents, but if you invest in a bond that matures in 10 years plus, or if you buy a bond that matures in 10 years plus, it means the withholding tax is only 10%. That means for every interest that you earn, you get back a 90% of it net. So if you, as we're going to look at the numbers on the screen that you are looking at, if you invest in a bond which is 5 years and 2 years and 3 years, those get interest withholding tax of 20%. So you can see you want to pay as less tax as possible. And less tax as possible comes in if you invest in a bond which is longer term. Now, the second question which I'm seeing on the screen from Solomon, where he's asking, does 20 years, do you get payback in between? Yes. That's the most beautiful thing about the bonds. Bonds, you are given money every 6 months, interest. So we're going to look at the numbers, but every 6 months, the Bank of Uganda gives you back your coupon for the length of the period. Now, if you buy a bond for 20 years, it means you're going to be given money every 6 months for the 20-year period. Then at the end of the 20 years, you are given back that money. I don't know if that answers your question, Solomon. Perfect. So we're going to look at this, and also Solomon and everyone who had that same similar question. The biggest concept of you making your money, make money, more money for you, is around that point that every 6 months you get back your money. What is the comparison of the bonds vis-a-vis unit trusts? We're going to look at it later. Let's first focus on understanding the bonds, because unit trusts are easier. Then we shall look at which one makes more sense for you and which one you should have. So, and I'm using, and we talked to, when I talked to Kareb to understand what you are looking out for, and that's why I'm using 100 million. One of your investment goal was to save up to 100 million. So let's use 50, because chances are right now you guys have a 50 million somewhere on a unit trust sitting idly. Now, like I've said, right now the government bonds, the Bank of Uganda, or yes, the government Bank of Uganda's bonds that are 5 years and above, they either give around a 14% interest, 15 or 16. Now, it's interesting to note that a year ago, around the COVID period, the government was even giving out 18%. That was sweet, because in 18%, it's everything. But let's use what we are having on the market and what we are anticipating that's going to happen in the next few years. It's going to be between 14 to 16. So we're going to look at the numbers differently. And what that means is for every $1, for every 100 shillings you invest, the government gives you the 14%. It's the standard computation. But if you are to get 50 million and you are to put it in a bond right now, and you buy, let's say, a 5-year bond and it has a 14% interest, or you buy a 10-year bond and it has a 15% interest, or you buy a 15-year bond that has a 16% interest. It's important to note that the longer the bond, the better the interest rate. Are we okay on that point? So before I even go to the numbers, let me show it to you here. This is the calendar. I will share it with you to have it. I always advise people to print it and have it with you. But this is the calendar and this is how it looks. You can see the 2-year bonds. This is Bank of Uganda calendar. The 2-year bonds, they have a 14% coupon rate. 3-year bonds, they have not quoted it. 5-year bond, it goes to 14.125. 10-year bond, it goes to 14.35. And the 20-year, 15 years, it goes to 16. So the first thing you have to take away is you want to make more money, buy a longer term bond. It's always advisable. Yeah, Brenda, some banks charge different, which is best bank to invest with. I will address that at the end. So this is these rates here that I'm pointing at red are the rates which we're going to use in the numbers for you to see what we are trying to look at. Now, at 14%, that means every single year, the government will give you back 7 million. At 15%, it will give you back 7.5. At 16%, it will give you back 8 million. So now it's upon you as a group to sit back and say, where do we make the most money possible? But you can see the higher rate makes you the most money. But you have to go back and understand, does this, if you are to buy the higher rate, means I'm going to buy a 15-year bond, does it fit into our investment strategy? Are we okay to hold this bond for this long? Because chances are you might be like, you want to hold it for 5 years, depending on your goals. And those goals are specific. There are some investment clubs where they are saying, we want to do this for 5 years. That's okay. Then they should buy for 5 years. But if your goal is for 15 years, if your investment goals can go up like 15, 16 years, then you go for the long-term bond. As you can see, the long-term bond is that which has the highest rate. And the 20-year bond has the higher rate, and you can get more money quickly. And what does that mean? It means if you have 50 million and you put it into a bond, you are always in. And let's use, and for this discussion, allow me to use the longer term bonds, which means at 16%. I will then hide this such that it doesn't confuse us, right? At 50%, 16%. What that means is in around 7 years from now, you would have got back your amount you have invested in. So if they give you back your 8 million in just 7 years, you'd get back the money you have put in. Then the remaining 8 years, those are interest. But remember, they give you back this 50 million you have even put in, they give it to you back at the maturity of that bond. So that is the biggest benefit of the bonds investing in the treasuries that is not anywhere else. That in a short-term period, you can get back in literally 7 years, you can get back the money you have invested in. Then the rest of the years, you are getting back the interest. But that's not the biggest benefit. The biggest benefit of investing in treasury bonds is what we call bond laddering. Bond laddering is if one of you are family people, there is something like, I'm going to use a family tree, that if you are the bigger, if you are your grandfather potentially had 3 kids, then your father had 4 of you. Now, if you have 1 child, then the tree of your grandfather potentially now, which had 3 kids, now has close to 20, 30 people. Why? There has been compounding. That if he had 3 kids, those 3 kids potentially also brought in 3. Now, also those 3 have brought in 3, so that's how the family grows. Now, that's the same concept you can use in the bond. The question, just that technically we call it bond laddering. It's a matter of saying, And this is simple. It is not complicated, but walk with me slowly here. In 2023, I'm assuming in 2023, you agreed to buy a bond. You buy a bond of 50 million. That means in 2024, the government is going to give you 8 million in coupon. They will give it to you in cash. Now, if you get this 8 million in 2024 and invest it in 2024 in another bond, it means now you have two bonds. You'll have the 50 million bond and you'll have the 7 million bond. Then the 7 million, no, not 7, the 8 million. This 8 million bond will start also bringing you interest every single year. Now that's the second thing. In 2025, you will have the government will this 50 million bond will bring you another 8 million, and this 8 million you have invested in the 2024 will bring you a 1.2, which is a total of 9.2. That is the money you will earn in 2025. Now you invest that money in another bond here. See, now you have 3 bonds. You are using the money you invested at the beginning to invest to create other bonds without you touching other money. I'm assuming you have not brought in any extra money. Now, that is 2025. Now we enter 2026, the election year. Remember, now you have 3 bonds. You have the original bond, you have its first child, it's bringing you money. You have the second child, it's bringing you money. Now you create a third child. Why? Every bond you buy brings in money. So that is the best concept. And it happens, it's what we call an iterative process. That the child brings in another child, the child brings in another child, and the child they have brought in will also bring in another child. So what happens is that if you play this game for a long term, every single year that the money you get, you invest it back in the bond. Actually, the concept is simple as saying, whatever money the government, the Bank of Uganda pays you back, always go back and buy an extra bond, an extra bond, an extra bond for at least 15 years. What that creates is that by the time you are done, you are turning this 50 million that you have invested in 15 years, I'm using 15-year compounding, into around 680 million. And that's the minimum. And it's not trying to say, hey, how is it possible? It's possible in the simplest way possible is if you can commit as a group and say, we have the 50 million, we want to turn this into this. How do we do it? That's how you do it. That for every money that you get, invest it back. Because when you invest it back, it makes more money. Don't withdraw it and use it for other things. Commit to seeing it for at least the period you are investing in. Then you'll see magic. That's where it's multiplied. It's the compounding, it's the laddering of the bonds. And few people do it because what people most times do, when they buy the 50 million bond, every money that the government gives them, they withdraw it and use it for something else, which is also okay, because if you do it that way, what you would have done in 15 years, you would have turned that 50 million into 170 million, which is 3 times. But that is not the best. The best is turning this 50 million into 600 million plus. Let me first pause there if someone has a question. I know this is where it starts to get interesting. Any question there so far? Hello? Okay, we are still okay. Brian, if you have a question.
Alex, Brian has a hand.
Yeah, a hand. Yes, Brian. You can mute. I think you are muted. You can unmute and ask. Okay.
Hello,
Yes, Brian. Now I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, is this the same concept where there's sometime we're discussing on the group,
Mm,
and we had a question where I think that if someone use the bonds for a given period of time, it will do, if well calculated, depending on the capital
mm,
they have, it's where
mm.
they can be able to repay back their, let's say, their salary in case they pulled out, they had some good capital to invest.
Yes, it's possible. So you now, I think you're using the concept of salary. Some people use it in a comparative to rent, where if you create a platform, or not platform, if you create a portfolio that kind of literally gives you monthly interest, that's the same as bond laddering. But you see, to do that, you need to play at least for a period of time. You like I've showed you, you are starting with 50 million, right? If you withdraw every single month, you would have every single year they give you the money and you use it, you are eating away the biggest chunk of it. But if you, even if you commit and say, let me play it, let me put in the 50 million now, and for the first 7 years, I will always put it back, put it back, put it back. Then after protection, after 80 years, and that's why I say it goes back to where you are as a group or as an individual, and when you design your investment strategy. The challenge is most of us just invest for the sake of investing. Actually, most of us invest for the sake of what's the word to use? We invest for emergencies. Like, let me put money somewhere else for, in case something ever happens, I will have something. No, you sometimes have to sit back and say, I'm 35, or I'm here in life. I want to be here at 45. Maybe I want to retire at 45. How much money will I need if I'm to retire? That if I'm to ever, oh, maybe I'm 45, I want to retire at 55, or I'm getting sick, I want to retire soon. How much money will I need if I retire? That I will always need 1 million every single month. So then you work towards, you work and invest in such a way that it guarantees you that by the time you pull off that plug and retire and go home, the money you are going to get in these bonds is equivalent to your salary, and it will add comfortably. So that means the way you have to play that game, the compounding game, the laddering game is different, but it's still the same concept. I don't know if that addresses your question, Brian. All right. So let's assume, and you see, I used 50 million because I say that's the case. But let's assume you guys have 100 million. The more money you put in, the more benefits where they are. And it's a matter of I will share this with you. I will share this work paper with you. You can play with it and try to track it down. But let's assume you can access 100 million, or you have 100 million right now, and you do the same. You just go buy the 10-year bond, and every single 6 months they give you that money. You invest in it. You go and buy another bond. What you end up creating is, like I said, I want to look at just this side. You end up creating this 100 million and turn it into 1.3 billion. Now, there are not so many businesses in Kampala that you can put 100 million and they do less supervision, worry, and do not worry that they are going to default, and at least you are guaranteed that it will turn into a billion company in 10 years. Very few. Actually, if none, potentially none, not even real estate can guarantee you that. So, and that's where the benefits of the bonds can happen. It happens if you can take away two concepts for me today, and these are the concepts I want us to focus on. One, the bonds make money. They indeed make money. But two, they make absolutely a lot of money if you are willing to play the long-term game and ladder your bond and literally reinvest every interest that you get for at least the starting 5 years. That if you are to invest, yeah, if you are to invest in a 15-year bond, at least the first 5 years, whatever you get, put it back. So the good thing is you guys are a club, so an investment club. Investment clubs rarely do they withdraw to spend. So if you say let's commit for the first 10 years, if we buy the first big bond of 100 million, every single coin you get for the first 10 years, put it back. because they will be paying you every 6 months. They will be depositing money on your account, on your commercial bank account every 6 months. Now, every time you get the money, put it back. You will turn that 100 million into a billion, and you look back and be like, wow, thank God we did that. Now, that's where the magic is for me. Those two concepts are very, very important. Very, very important. Now, let me first also talk about some banks charge different, which is the best bank to buy. Now, there are two types of markets in the bonds. There is what we call the primary market and the secondary market. And this is very important. And potentially, if any of you follows me on Twitter, I've written about it today about the same. Primary market is when you buy the bond directly from the central bank. And the central bank sells bonds once every single month. This calendar here that I will share with you, I'll send it to Caleb. This calendar here, only, it sells once a month. But because bonds are any other security, there is a secondary market for it. Secondary market for it is when you go buy it, like let's assume your investment club, you buy it, and tomorrow you want to sell it, so you sell it to me. But the biggest players in the secondary market are banks. And the banks are there to make money. That's their job. The banks are here to make money. So when you go to buy a bond in the secondary market, they will, most times they sell them differently. Some banks are just exorbitant. They are almost reaching fraudulent level. So if you are buying a bond, the first advice I always tell people, buy it from the primary market. Be willing to wait and go buy from the central bank. The good thing, they sell every single month. Like right now, if you sit back and say, hey, we have this money, we are interested in buying the bond, we know here by this calendar, the Bank of Uganda is selling a bond in October. Here it has, yes, October 4th. Then you put that money and say, let me wait for October 4th and go buy the 20-year treasury bond. It's always cheaper to buy the bond from the treasury, from the central bank. But if at one point you want to buy from a bank, I personally deal with NCBA. Why? I have established a working relationship with their treasury person that I can easily call and I say, I need this bond, or I have this person who wants to buy this bond. Do you have it on your market? Can they come and buy it from you? And it has been working so far. Now, I might sit back and I tell you, go to NCBA. If you can establish that rapport and relationship with the person, or potentially one of you has a workmate, or not workmate, maybe a cousin, a sister, or anyone you know, a friend that works in a commercial bank that can get you in touch with the people who do these bonds, purchases and sales, and they might give you a better deal. So, but that is very true, Breda, with the question you have asked. It's always good to avoid banks that are charging extremely high costs. And some banks are literally right now just stealing from people. So if you can, two things, always buy from the primary market, which means buy from the central bank. Have that calendar, print it out. And one of you, potentially, maybe all of you, maybe make a decision when you're making investments. Yes, each of you should have that calendar, whether you are investing as a group or whether you are investing as a person. Have that calendar, print it out, and always know that there is a bond sale in November. Let me have my money almost 3 weeks in advance, and I have it on my account, and I buy from the Bank of Uganda. Okay, good question, Caleb. Now, to buy and sell in treasury bonds, like now that we are going into the technicalities, we have looked at the numbers. To buy and sell in the treasury bonds, whether it's from the primary market, central bank, or whether from the secondary market, with commercial banks, you need to open up what we call a CSD. It's what they call a Central Securities Depository account. That account sits with the Bank of Uganda. Anyone, if you are to buy and sell, that's the first thing. So the first thing, you're going to go to your commercial bank, the bank that you have your account with, and get the forms and fill up those forms, and they will get you a Central Securities account. That is the starting position. Now, to buy from Bank of Uganda, you have to know when the Bank of Uganda is selling, and that's the calendar it will tell you. I also post it almost every week. A week towards before they sell, I always post it. So you go and you write instructions. You fill up. There is a form you have to fill up. Each bank has its own. Now, I don't know which bank you guys have your account with, but let's look at this in two ways. We are looking at it from an investment club, but also let's look at it from an individual person, because you might want to deal with it. So if it's DFCU, then you have to go to DFCU and they get you the form that opens up a CSD account. When you have your CSD account, then when you know when the bond is going to be sold by Bank of Uganda, you fill up the securities, that purchase instructions to the Bank of Uganda. Then you give those instructions to DFCU for them to go and buy for you. You cannot buy yourself. And please, this caution is very, very important, because that's where I'm seeing where people are losing money. Do not allow the bank to talk you into buying their bond. Like I've showed you, the cost is high if you buy from them. Just say, I want to go and buy from Bank of Uganda. And you be specific and say, I can see a bond they're about to sell on 4th October. That's what I want. Nothing else. And they will sell it to you. Do not accept to buy it from their bank, because when you buy it from them, it is expensive. They are going to go, and remember, banks do not create treasury bonds. What happens is simple economics. They will go to the Bank of Uganda, buy it, maybe buy it at 10 million, come sell it to you at 11 million. Then you would have lost 1 million. Yet you would have gone and bought it from Bank of Uganda Electric at 10 million. So it's very, very important. Open up your CSD account. Like actually, if you, one of the follow-up questions I always have after a week, and I'll have it with Kareb, will be, have you guys opened up your CSD account yet? It would be really a loss of time and the efforts you have put in and the finances to facilitate this training if after a week you have not yet opened up your CSD account, whether individually or whether as a group. Then when that happens, you wait for when the bond is going to be sold. You, at least a week in advance, write that instruction, give it to the Bank of Uganda, give it to the commercial bank to go and purchase for you. You don't need anything, you just need that form, because your CSD account, Brenda, is linked to your commercial bank account. Now, your commercial bank account has already done all the KYC. So you literally, it's a simple form, by the way. It's a simple 2-page form. You just fill up the names, the signatories, the next of kin, and then you put it there, and that's it. Then it's linked with your commercial bank account. If you already have an account in Uganda, you are good to go. Now, Lydia is asking, what are the risks associated with the treasury bonds? The biggest risk, I will say, cost. Let me start from the cost. You have to always ensure you are buying at the cheapest possible. It's like any other thing. If you are buying land, let me give an example. I know in Uganda, we love to invest in land a lot. When you're investing in land, you want to buy the land cheaply. If it's correct, you don't want to pay so much expensive. You don't want to buy a land of 50 million and pay 70. You'd have lost money. You want to pay, if it's 50 and part is 50 or 52. So that's the first thing. You have to always pay attention. And the only way, the best way, not the only way, the best way to avoid paying expensively is to always buy from the primary market. Oh, forget primary market. The best way to always buy at a good price is to buy from Bank of Uganda, from the Central Bank of Uganda. That's the best way. The second risk is the risk which a few people who are getting interested in this are raising, the risk of default. Now, remember, this product, you are lending money to the government. It's like you, Lydia, lending money to Solomon. But then somehow Solomon starts playing games. There is that saying in Kampala where they say, you lend someone while you are seated, but you demand that money while you are standing, and after trying to explain to them why you need the money that you lent to them. Now, it's the same with lending to government. Any government can default, but governments do not default like individuals, and someone will assess and they say, oh, yes, we have seen the government, it's borrowing too much and what. Yes, but they are not defaulting. They don't just default like any other person. And in the last 40 plus years, the government has been doing this. They have not defaulted. The treasury bonds concept is not unique to Uganda alone. It's worldwide, it's everywhere. And all the people that are doing it, all the governments that are doing it, they are rarely default. That's why we always say it's the safest investment for people who want to do passive investments. It's the safest. Now, that question where I said that what about when the government changes? Yes, what we call the political risk. Yes, look at in Kenya, right? And look at right now what happened in Kenya. There were bonds that were sold off when Uhuru was the president. Now Ruto is the president. He still has to pay. That's why we do not lend to Ministry of Finance. We lend to Bank of Uganda. We lend to the technical arm of government, not to the political arm of government. Why? Because the political arm of government will always change, but the technical will always be the same. Bank of Uganda, yes, they can appoint a governor, but the core strength of Bank of Uganda remains the same. So the default on bonds, I cannot tell you it's zero, but I can also, it's like 2-3%. Let's say 2% actually, depending on the assessment of the political risk in Uganda. It's like 2%. And also, even if they are to default, they don't default. Like, let me give you an example of a country called Barbados. When it's a country we can think of that has recently defaulted in 2018. Their default was simple. They said, we do not have enough cash to pay off these bonds. And all loans, not bonds alone, all loans. They paused payment for 1 year to get their act together, then they resumed the payment. So that's what most governments tend to do, which we have seen, which is also still very rare, but that's what happens. They will tell you, and let me use Uganda in this case, they will say, hey, let's pause payments of interest for at least 1 year. Then after 1 year, they still go back and still pay you. Any other question on that before I move on? Okay, I know someone asked, there's a question what Brenda asked, what is the comparison of bonds vis-a-vis unit trusts? Now, unit trusts, one thing you have to appreciate, unity trusts is not an investment in their own. It's not a product. It's a leeway to invest in something. Unity trusts are like investment clubs, just guided by a different law and organized differently. But unity trusts still major, actually 80% of the unity trusts in Kampala, the funds are invested in treasury bonds. Now, the question you have to ask yourself, excuse me. Sorry about that. The question you have to ask yourself is that, where do I make money? Do I make money by putting my money in a unit trust, or do I make money by putting money in a bond? Unit trusts on average are giving a maximum 12%. And that's when, if a unit trust can give you 12.5%, go and shake its hand and say, hey, thank you, sir. Or thank you so much, madam. Yet in a bonds, we have seen you can even make up to 17%, depending. Like people who invested in bonds last year, they were 18.5. They were making, they were, the word to use, they were killing it. That's where the benefit is. So all of a sudden, when you start investing in bonds directly, you become a direct competitor to the unit trust in buying this bond, and you get more money from the unit trust, and not from the bonds. But the bonds, the unit trust have an amazing concept, the concept of liquidity, that you can easily access your money in a unit trust whenever you want. Now, that concept should never be undermined. Actually, when you are investing, we always say, always invest for certain emergencies. Emergency funds should never be put in something long term. You can't say, okay, let me put some money for my emergency, and then you buy land. You can't be saying, I need to pay school fees next year, and then you buy land. You might reach that time and you look for someone to buy that land and no one will buy it. Or the person who is buying it buys it cheaply and you end up making a loss. So that is where unit trusts are good. So the concept where we advise people, we say, what is the emergence? What is the level of liquidity that you must always have as a club, as an individual? Always we say not more than 20% of your net worth. That if as a club you have 100 million, maximum you should always have as a liquid investment should never go past 20%, which will be 20 million. But even 10 million should do. That the money should always put in the unit trust. Then the rest should go to the bonds. Why? You have seen you make money in the bonds. But this unit trust allows you to always have money that at any one point you need it. In unit trusts, you can get your money in 2 days, which might not be the same for the bonds. Yes, you can sell the bond, but you might go on to sell the bond at a point in time, and the bank that wants to buy it wants to give you less money. So that's where the issue comes in. And especially they always know when they are dealing with individuals. So that's where it is. So they are the same, but one makes more money than the other. And yet the other one is better when it comes to liquidity so unit trust is better when it comes to liquidity than treasury bonds. Compare investing in bonds versus land. Now, in Uganda, land is one of the best things someone can ever put in money, but not all land. Now, there are land we have seen, we have had stories. If you are Ugandan and you are looped into you have had stories where someone tells you, I got 50 million and I went to Chira 5 years ago, bought this plot of land at 50. It was a village. Now it's going for 250. And you're like, how? Then someone will tell you, I got 50 million, went to Maya, bought this land, and now it's 150 million. Then another one will tell you, I got 50 million, went to Kanungu, bought these 30 acres of land, and now someone can give me only 80 million. 3 people made the same purchases land in 3 different locations, and they have appreciated it differently. Now you have to ask yourself, your land you are buying, where is it? Will it appreciate? Because when you're looking at bonds, pay attention to this Excel. I'm going to share it with you. That if I'm to buy land, I'm going to buy land at 100 million. Or I'm going to buy a bond at 100 million. In 10 years, 15 years, will this land be worth 1.3 billion? Then it's a question of like that, simple. Will it appreciate in value? Now, there are places that can give it to you. There are people who tell you 10 years ago that land was 50 million, was 10 million. Now it's 100. But there are also places we know in Wakiso, whatever, they tell you that land was 10 million and now it's 25. Yes, it has grown in value. It's no longer what it was, but the bonds are beating it. And when it comes to rentals, it's even worse. Rentals, they will tell you rentals we know in Kampala, a rental, their rate of return is around 10, 11%. standard. If you get a rental that is giving you anything above 12%, that's very good. Yet bonds are going to give you 16%. So you have to, it's a matter of looking at the numbers. I cannot tell you one is better than the other, but I will tell you for a fact, majority of the land, especially village land, if you go, you're going to Luwero to buy 50 acres of land, you're going to Masakam, you're going to Mayuge, because they look big, but they do not appreciate in value. Yes, someone will tell you on Entebbe Road, someone bought in Garuga 8 years ago, plot of land they bought at 25 million, now it's going for 100 million. You know, so depending on where you are even buying land, that's where. And it also goes back to your investment strategy. You have to think about, do we have the expertise? What are the risks with the land? What if Zempewo? You know, it's not there. In bonds, there will never be ARA bonds. The bonds with the Bank of Uganda, you get your certificate, it's issued your certificate, to the full names, it is in your names and everything, you know. Let me see if I can show you okay, give me a second. Okay, but you can bring in questions as I'm trying to get something here. Come on, where are you? 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 Protect. Sorry, I wanted to just show you a certificate here. So you can see. So the certificate that you end up getting looks like this. It will be Banco. Can you see this? Let me know if you guys can see the screen I'm showing. Yeah. Okay, Caleb can see it. So it will look like this. It will be, you get your certificate that shows you here. What I've blacked out are the names of the person, let's say the bond. They'll tell you it's Bank of Uganda, it's from Bank of Uganda. It will tell you what type you are holding, when it matures, how much it's worth, and how much you have paid, and the interest you and everything. So it will be like this. So you're not about to buy air when it comes to the bond, but with the land, you can buy land and somehow. So now the political instability of the bonds, that's a good point. When it comes, we cannot ignore the political risks that comes with the bonds. But remember, political risks affect everything else. Every investment can be impacted by political instability. The immediate impact of it is, for example, World Bank has suspended any new funding to to government, which means government, if the government was planning to use most of World Bank funding, they have to look for the way to get that money, which is either to borrow from other Chinese companies, whatever, or to borrow locally, which is through treasury bonds. So the first impact we are going to expect to see is the treasury bonds interest coupon will go up, because the government will want more money than the market is willing to give, so they will have to issue more interest rate. So that's the first thing. The second thing is what we talked about, the default, which is not strong, but very remote, but possible. That if, let's assume they were to happen a government to change right now, and you get in a new government for whichever color it might be, you end up having to, new people come with the new rules. They might come and they say, let's first suspend these payments for 1 year and look at these books, then we can continue paying. So that can impact. So you cannot run away from that. That's part of the risks. Those two risks are the biggest for me. Any other questions? Okay, I think we have come at the top of the hour. I don't know if there is any other question around treasury bonds. I know that was the most important thing we had to cover. So my biggest takeaway, there are two things or three things for you. One, open up the CSD account. All you have to go is to go to DFCU. But even if you don't want DFCU, you can go to any other bank. They can open up your CSD account. Two, try as much as possible. If not, do that only. Buy from the primary market, buy from the central bank. Don't buy bonds on the market that are there floating. They are more expensive than buying from the central bank. And it's a concept of understanding. If you buy from a middleman, it's always expensive than buying from the owner. And the owner of these bonds is the central bank. So it's a concept as that. The third thing is commit. Have the goal, have the investment strategy that we want to play this for a longer term. And every money that you get from the bank, reinvest it back. You will see, you have seen the numbers, and I'm going to share this with you. A bond which is 5 years, a bond which is 15 years, if you don't reinvest it, the total amount you'd have got would have been 170, would have been for 50 million, would have been just 170. But if you reinvest almost everything that you get and put it back, it moves from 50 to 100, 630. Now, ask yourself, which one do you want to have after 15 years? I would want to have a 600 instead of a 170. So that's the concept there. Thank you so much. Back to you, Caleb.
Well, thanks, Alex. And I think we really had it's a great knowledge that we have picked, and I think now as we coming to I don't know if Alex they are outside the bonds. I think we have seen the bond, the unit trust, which we are already investing in, and then the unit trust bonds, and looked at also the land aspects. Maybe in a few minutes, if there would be those other options that think would be able, and they provide opportunity for the investment club like ours, that we can be able to invest in. Maybe it would be good to highlight. I know we are planning to meet physically as a team to digest most of these things. So there should be options that we can discuss and say, now is all the information we have gathered, let's take this one, but based on informed point of view. So if there are those other ones that you can highlight, it would be good, such that we can do a lot of comparisons and take a decision on what we can do. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think the next possible thing which I can talk about for a group like you and also at an individual level is buying into equities. It's something you can do. They have good returns, but they have very high risk. The high risk of equities is that it can go down, it can go up. There are periods they have gone down. For example, MTN, ever since it listed, it has been going down. It has not come up, but maybe one day it will come up. But that will be another thing to put in. And sometimes you always have to ask yourself, for as long as I can risk this money and I now might not, even if I'm to lose it, I won't cry. That's the money you start with to invest in equities. There is the Airtel IPO that is happening right now. That might be the best IPO that you might want to invest in right now. That's okay. We don't have so many IPOs in Uganda. We have one once every, God knows, 3 years. So now we have one. Go and buy those equities. They will make you some money. They might make you losses in the beginning when the price goes down, but in 5 years, 7 years, they will go up. And when they go up, you'll be happy that you have bought in early. And that's one thing. So you have to, when you're looking at equities, you have to say which equity should I buy? We all know, we all use Airtel money. Not Airtel Uganda. Chances are most of us right now have an Airtel line. That means you pay airtime. That's the company you're buying in. Just as right now, all of us we either have an Airtel or an MTN. So go buy those shares and be part of the shareholding. You say right now you bank with the DFCU. Go buy the DFCU shares. Why? When it makes money, they give you part of your money. So chances are the money you would have invested in, they are getting from you as a customer, they're going to give it to you back in dividends as a shareholder. So shares, equities is another way to invest. They are risky, they are riskier, and their biggest risk is that one, that prices can go down. They actually, let me put it this way, they can write an article today and they say the CEO has been caught in a scandal and boom, price goes down. Tomorrow they write and they say, okay, the bank has gotten a license to expand in South Sudan, boom, price goes up. But they are also very good investments. And the Airtel IPO is a good thing to start with right now. It's a good one because it's ongoing right now. And all you need is a 250K. I don't know if any of you has invested in them or you have heard about it, but all you need is 250K to be part of that share, to buy shares in the company, in Airtel Uganda.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Colleagues, any burning that we might need to pick from Alex? I know we had a tough discussion internally, as Brian said, within our group when we saw that, and I think we had something to do with investing in dollars. I don't know if Brian, you want to say something about that, but maybe colleagues, we are trying to. I think Alex, you can donate to us sometime, eh?
Yeah, I've so far donated 9 minutes, so but I'm okay. It's this is what I do for. I love to do this. I don't want also to leave you with so many questions, but when you talk about USD, and most of you work in a humanitarian world with these big organizations, which we all admire to one day work for. Let me just ask, does any of you earn in dollars? Like your salary or your contract is in dollars?
Brian,
Amash,
Brian confirmed.
Amash, no one is saying anything, so I'm assuming we are all in UGX. But if we are to, yes, so okay, maybe Brian. So if Brian, yes. Now, if you are in dollars, these companies are starting to bring, today UAP launched their US dollar unity trust. Britam launched one last week. So they are starting to give interests in dollars, and they are trying to call what we call it, not they try to call, we call it hedging the FX. That you earn $1,000, they'll give you 5%, but potentially in 1 year's time, that 5% is better than them giving you 12%. That's if you earn in dollars. If you earn in UGX, that you must first buy dollars. Do not. You will lose your money because they will sell you the dollar is expensive and then they buy the dollars cheaply. Don't. But if you earn already in dollars, then for you might be an advantage. But that advantage is only applicable if you anticipate that the dollar is going to go up. For example, if you have $1,000 and right now the FX is 3.7 and you invest in a dollar unit trust, that means in 1 year and the UGX goes to 3.8, then the one who would have invested in the dollar would have made more money. But if after 1 year the dollar rate goes down to 3.6, the one who would have invested in the dollar account would have lost a lot of money. So that's where it is. You have to look at it. It's they don't give you the higher rate, but they hedge you from FX losses. So you have to always be thoughtful about that. That do I earn in UGX If you earn in UGX, do not invest in a USD account. You know, if you earn, if I've lost a member, I'm not sure. Okay, Brian, I've lost Brian. If you earn in USD, then for you, you can give it a try. But as long as at one point when you see the UGX falling from its high, right now it's around 3.7. As soon as you see it going to 3.6, move your money quickly back to the UGX UT. That's where it makes more money. I don't know if that answers your question, Caleb.
Yes, thanks, Alex. That it answers that the question. So I don't know if colleagues, we are on donated time. I don't know, Solomon, Lydia, Brenda, any other comment? I know, Alex, this might not be the last time for us to engage. Some might be even bilaterally. I hope you will allow that we give the number to the team, and
Yes,
and then
please.
they can reach out to you bilaterally, not only on the Apex Investment Club side. They can reach out and think and pick your thoughts as well. So Solomon, do you have and Solomon is the right person to conduct